The Parable of the Cracked Pot, a story of imperfections and purpose. Once upon a time, in a quaint village nestled between rolling hills, there was an old man who carried water to his home every morning. He had two clay pots. One was old, cracked, and weathered, while the other was newer, perfect in shape and sturdy. Every day, the man would fill both pots at the river's edge, and with each step toward home, the cracked pot leaked water. By the time they reached the man's home, the newer pot was full, while the cracked one was only half full. At first, the cracked pot felt ashamed of its imperfection. It would apologize to the man, saying, "I'm sorry. I cannot carry my full weight. I am not as good as the other pot." The man would smile and say, "Do not worry, my friend. You are doing your job just fine." But one day, the cracked pot, troubled by its inability to perform as well as the other pot, asked the man, "Why do you keep using me if I can't carry as much water as the other pot? Should I be discarded?" The man gently looked at the pot and said, "I've always known your imperfections, and I want you to pay attention to something. Look around us as we walk to the house." As the pot looked down, it saw the beautiful flowers growing along the path. "Do you see these flowers?" the man asked. "These flowers would not exist if you had been perfect. You see, I've planted seeds on your side of the path. Every time you leaked water, it nourished the ground, allowing these flowers to bloom. Without your imperfections, there would be no beauty here." The cracked pot was taken aback. "But I thought my flaws were a burden, something to be ashamed of," it said. "How can something so flawed create beauty?" The man smiled and said, "You see, my friend, your imperfections are not something to be ashamed of. They are what make you special. Through your perceived weakness, you've created life and beauty along the way. While the perfect pot carried the water, it did not nourish the ground. It is through your cracks that the flowers grow, reminding us that sometimes our greatest gifts come not from our strengths, but from our flaws." The cracked pot, now understanding, held its head high. It no longer saw its cracks as burdens, but as sources of purpose. It had been fulfilling its role all along, not by being perfect, but by embracing its unique imperfections. As the seasons passed, the man continued to carry his two pots, one cracked and one whole. Over time, the flowers grew more vibrant, covering the entire path from the river to the house, turning the once dull road into a breathtaking garden. People from neighboring villages started coming to admire the beauty, walking along the path and marveling at how something so simple could be so captivating. They didn't realize that it was the cracked pot that had made it all possible. One day, a traveler, drawn by the beauty of the path, asked the man, "How did this garden come to be?" The man smiled and said, It was not me, but one of my pots. You see, the cracked pot thought it was broken, but it was in its brokenness that the beauty of this garden was born." The traveler, surprised, looked at the two pots. He had never realized that something broken could create such beauty. With new understanding, he left, carrying a message for the world. Perfection doesn't create beauty, imperfections do. And as he walked away, he smiled, thinking of the cracked pot that had unknowingly taught the world one of the most valuable lessons of all. Sometimes, we look at our flaws and imperfections as weaknesses, believing they hinder our potential. But just like the cracked pot, our greatest purpose and impact often come from embracing what we perceive as flaws. It is through our vulnerabilities, not our perfection, that we can bring beauty, growth, and life to the world around us.